एवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनम् देवकी परमानन्दम् कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्. So we will continue our Bhagavad Gita class. We were discussing verse number 13 to 15. We had just begun, we had not completed the discussion on verse number 13. So I'll just recapitulate. The question Sri Krishna seems to be asking, or rather answering, anticipating that Arjuna would like to know. Because all the knowledge that Arjuna has till now is an intellectual understanding of the principles of Sankhya, of Vedanta, and all that Sri Krishna decided to share with him. So he is giving him all the different different ideas from our tradition. And at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, we'll ask him to think carefully and choose whatever appeals to him. He does not even impose these teachings on Arjuna. He says, I have explained whatever I had to. Now you decide, if you consider it very carefully, what I have said. And among all the teachings, 700 verses, it was not the last verse of Bhagavad Gita, but it's somewhere towards the end, he says, I have explained to you whatever I had to in these 18 chapters, which are 18 different yogas, means to attain to the highest reality, which according to Vedanta is merging in Brahman. But that is the ultimate goal. But a sadhaka has to pass through several stages. And depending on the stage in which sadhaka finds himself, his swadharma is decided. So, though the highest goal may be very alluring to a person, still Sri Krishna says you have to make all the prior preparations and reach a stage where the highest wisdom can be realized, not just understood. So hopefully by chapter 13, he has explained so many things. We have discussed all the different ways and means and paths, out of which Arjuna is supposed to select whatever suits him according to his swadharma, and then decide upon the future course of action. That is how sadhana progresses. So if you see the history of all the different saints and sages, that especially those who have been born in India, in each one of them, in the life of each one of them, you'll find different stages. They began perhaps with a very simple understanding. I'm talking of the saints, I'm not talking of the incarnations here, like Krishna, Rama, and others. I'm talking of the ordinary saints who have acquired wisdom by the grace of the Lord. They will evolve. They always keep on evolving till they reach the highest. So, after explaining the different steps that are necessary or that are to be practiced before one can realize the highest, Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna that a stage will come when it is not just an intellectual understanding of what is Brahman, what is Prakriti, what is Purusha, what is Maya. There are so many terms that have been explained in great detail. But now he says there are certain experiences which a person or a sadhaka may have before merging into the highest reality or Brahman, which is the goal of all the four Purusharthas. Moksha is the goal of all the Purusharthas. Purusharthas means efforts that we make. Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. So Hinduism, unlike many other religions, is a religion for everyone who are at different stages of life. That is why we find so much of apparent contradiction in the teachings of great saints, like Gita. Even Arjuna is confused. He says, now you say that knowledge is the highest, and then you are asking me to fight, asking me to do karma yoga in the next chapter. So you tell me definitely what I am to do. So Krishna understands this predicament of every sadhaka, what exactly he is to do. So he is giving a broad picture or a complete picture in the 700 verses, expecting that the sadhaka, either in consultation with his guru or Krishna in this case, asks him what is the best thing for him to do at this moment, or he has to decide himself. In fact, in the end of 18th chapter, somewhere near the end, Krishna prefers the second method. He says, I have told you what I had to tell you. Now consider all these things, teachings, or all the instructions that I have given, and follow what you feel. If you feel it is correct, or if you feel like following one or two or many, you follow. So the effect, but he is trying to explain everything that is possible. So he says, even before one reaches the ocean of immortality, there are certain signs. The effect of evolving wisdom, the wisdom when the buddhi expands. See, there is no end to the limit to which the buddhi can be expanded. So, as we discussed in the previous Saturday class, Vedanta and the Science of Human Possibilities, where we find that our spiritual life starts when we try to find out what exactly is our higher mind. As I said, in Vedanta, in Sankhya, in all yoga also, broadly speaking, there are two minds. One is the lower mind, which is manas, a reactive mind, which can be connected to all the sense organs. The sensory input that we get, we process it, and brain is a part of that. Neurophysical, so you may say it is a psychophysical organism. Our body is a psychophysical organism where the mind acts upon the nervous system, especially the brain, and it processes the information that the nervous system presents before it, and then it reacts. That is the lower mind, as we know. That is a purely reactive mind, which does not give you wisdom according to Indian philosophy. It is the higher mind, or buddhi, a higher development of the mind that leads to the expansion of the choice making capacity. That is the best we can say. Viveka means choice, to make the right choice at the right time in life. So that wisdom doesn't come easily, because sensory input has nothing to do with it. How you process the sensory information and how you react to it, that is the reactive mind. Manas can do that. A highly skillful manas mind will be very skillful in processing information that it gets to the various sense organs, and it will do things in a very skillful way. But whether that skillful way will lead to his evolution of the buddhi or not, that is not guaranteed. That development starts when you take up the spiritual path, where you will find that the information that has come to the lower mind, instead of reacting immediately, the higher mind tells that lower mind, okay, don't just go by what you see, what you hear, what you feel, and don't be highly reactive in your approach to life. Allow the mind a little, let it be a little calm. That is what yoga is supposed to do. It is supposed to reduce the vibrations of the mind to such an extent that in that peaceful and calm atmosphere, you take a proper decision. The lesser the turbulence in the mind, lower mind, the better the decision will be. It's not rocket science. Anybody knows that when you are calm, peaceful, you normally consider the pros and cons of every situation and take a very well informed decision. So when this wisdom, the capacity of the buddhi increases, what happens? That is explained in verse 13 to 15. It is explained in a cosmic way, not in an individual way. That is why we have to be a bit careful. Every microcosm has a counterpart in the macrocosm. When you say uh, an individual is divine, we have a concept of a universal divine. That is why Vishwarupa was explained, where the God, the creator is creator, or the supreme Ishvara has been described as having so many mouths, so many hands, so many feet. Wherever you see it is, you can see that Vishwarup which Sri Krishna showed Arjuna, and he saw it through his divine chakshu, was nothing but a extension of the individual evolution at a cosmic level. So, on a gross level, we are individual bodies, animals, plants, inanimate objects, the whole creation, the whole gross creation, the sum total of all that is known as Virat. That is the technology that they use. Virat means the same uh, aspect of reality, which is the sum total of gross. So, whatever happens in your body, it somehow or the other impacts the atoms and uh, molecules around you, wherever you may be. So, we are part of the cosmic Virat, or the cosmic reality physically. Then we come to the mental level. As the subtle, every human being has a subtle aspect. The sum total of all our minds, or all the subtle bodies of every individual, if you put it together, it is connected to the universal subtle body, which is known as Ishvara. So we are projecting everything. When you say Ishvara, it is a larger version of your own self. So that is why in the Purusha Sukta, which we chant in the mornings, mostly it is chanted in the morning, just to give you an idea of the the great Purusha, great Ishvara, who is having. We have 2 feet, 2 hands, one head, one mouth, and all those things. So what you do is, when you uh, take that subtle personality at a universal level, you will find all the mouths, all the hands, all the feet. You try to imagine in a subtle way. They form part of the whole. Our subtle body forms part of a universal subtle body, which is Ishvara. So before we reach Brahman, which is beyond Ishvara, which is beyond the gross body, that is Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, and Karana Sharira, which we discussed in Vedanta. Karana Sharira is the causal body. So, sum total of causal body also we can find in the universe. So, we have it is known as Prajna. Prajna means or it can be it in this Ishvara, or you can even say it is Hiranyagarbha, and Prajna is the sum total of the causal body. So anyway, at the gross level it is Virat. So when wisdom evolves in a single person, what is its universal counterpart? Physically, he showed the Vishwarupa Darshana, many mouths, and he was horrified. Arjuna was horrified to see that, because he thought reality was pleasant. But if you see the gross reality outside, as many good people are there, so many bad people are also there. As many good things are happening, so many bad things, wars, killing, everything is going on. So it is, in a ultimate sense, it is neutral. But if you see, you cannot have only part of that pie or part of the cake which is good. If somebody gives you a whole cake, half of it, you have to accept the whole. You can't accept the good portion. That is what we see Arjuna trying to do. He sees the wonderful form of Sri Krishna, and when Sri Krishna shows him the terrible aspect of the gross reality, which by its very nature is destructive, whatever is created has to be destroyed. So, what is wrong? I mean, when you accept the gross universe, just as you accept creation, you have to accept destruction. When something is created, it has a temporary life. It may have a short life, it may have long life, but one day it has to be destroyed. So it is part of the universal truth, which is known as Virat. So also he says there is a subtle existence, the Ishvara, which appears to be sum total of all the subtle bodies. So we have two arms. As I told you, the Sri Ramakrishna was once told by his disciples. They were very sad that he had cancer and he was about to die. So they wanted to somehow, they thought if his physical body is preserved for a few more days or few more years, it will be more useful for them because people understand the gross more easily than the subtle. So there was a lot of pressure, and Naren said, at least for our sake, you extend your life. You can pray to the mother, definitely she will answer your prayers. You live for a little more time. And then he goes and asks mother, just because these people were insisting, and then comes back and says that, see, you asked me a thing which I never asked of the Divine Mother. I went and asked, and she showed me, are you not ashamed of yourself? You are eating through all these mouths. So many people, you are eating through so many mouths. Why are you so keen to eat through one mouth only? In fact, he goes and says that, you see, there's so much pain, I can't eat a morsel of food. I'm just taking some kind of pious every day, some liquid diet. So can you make me eat? These people say that if I eat something, I'll live. So he goes to pray, and then the mother scolds him. So that means when you evolve in wisdom, the gross body or the sum total of the gross body, you try to understand that as the sum total of the subtle bodies. So that is what is explained. He said when wisdom, buddhi evolves, from the physical level he goes to the subtle level. And he tries to see the same God whom he perhaps saw in a photograph or in an image or in a Shivalinga as a gross existence which I worship through rituals. Now he is doing the same thing because his buddhi has evolved. He sees the same God as Sarvatah Panipadam Tat Sarvato Kshishiro Mukham Sarvata Shrutimal Loke Sarvam Avrutya Tishtati. So he says, Krishna says, when the effect of your buddhi, when it evolves, buddhi evolves, and this is just a stage in the evolution of the buddhi. So you see the same reality in a different way. He saw that reality as a Vishwarupa when he saw Sri Krishna's physical form, and he was horrified when he saw the terrible form. So he said, you just withdraw it, let us be normal. So he comes down, and then he tries to explain the Kshetra Kshetragna Yoga, which is the chapter which we are discussing here, in which who is the Kshetra? Kshetra means the field. Kshetragna means one is the knower of the field. So before we reach the state where we reach the knower of the field or Brahman, he says there are intermediate stages. You can't just jump from a physical level to the absolute level. There is a subtle level where you will see visions, you'll pass through many things. So that stage, the effect of evolution in wisdom, when buddhi becomes more and more subtle. As you go do japa, the main purpose of doing sadhana or repeating the mantra is to evolve this buddhi. How it evolves, it is not very apparent. It's not very apparent when we do it because it is a time consuming process. Every time you repeat mentally, of course, that's why they say you should repeat it in a subtly, not loudly, because then it will have some gross effect, but the subtle effect will be there if you repeat it subtly. So in the subtle existence, our wisdom evolves in this particular manner, according to Sri Krishna. And every repetition of the mantra, which has a bija, it is supposed to destroy one particle of ignorance. Our bodies, our personalities are composed of so much of accumulated samskaras. So one by one, it is dislodged, it is destroyed, and the evolution takes place. So in this evolved state, Arjuna is told by Krishna that in verse 13 to 14, Sarvata Panipad, everywhere you will see hands and feet of that Lord in a subtle way. Sarvata Shishiro Mukham, Shira, Akshi Shira Mukam. Akshi means eyes, head and mouth. Shira means head and mouth. So everywhere, the subtle Lord seems to be listening to everything, seeing everything. Nothing is hidden from him. That is how most of the Semitic religion describe Allah or any other God that they believe in. He is a sort of Ishvara of the Vedanta, where the Lord sees everything. How does he see everything? He doesn't seem to have physical eyes or ears. But in a subtle way, whatever we see is part of the universal seeing. So, with hands and feet everywhere, with eyes and hands and mouths everywhere, with ears everywhere, he exists enveloping all. So, he envelopes everything, whatever we see around us. In the Ishopanishad also is there. Isha Vasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. In this world, whatever you see, cover it or envelop it with the Lord. The subtle, in a subtle way, He is in and through, He is all pervading. So, before reaching the sea, the example is given, the sea of Brahman as it is. Jivatma merges into Nirguna Brahman. He passes, it's just like a river. The same water, when it merges into the sea, it becomes one with the sea. But before that, it will encounter pebbles, it will encounter mountains, it will encounter greenery, it will encounter so many things. And it thinks, oh, this is real, this is real. So, all these visions, all these experiences of the buddhi, when it evolves, it will see different things before it reaches the goal. But these different beings, though they have their own individualities, the other mouths, the other heads, the other feet, everything that you encounter, though they seem to have their own individuality. For an evolved buddhi, they are actually part and parcel of the Ishvara. So, though we cannot see the transcendental, we say this immanent God. That is how these nature poets, they see some kind of divinity in the brooks, that's why they love nature. They just don't see it as a scientist sees. They don't want to just know the property of water and what it can do for you, what it can. They just enjoy the cosmic presence. So this is how Sri Krishna is explaining that when you are evolving, you see the cosmic presence in everything around you. That is like seeing God everywhere in a subtle way. And though they are individuals, they're somehow connected to that infinite Ishvara, the Saguna Ishvara. You are not yet gone to a stage where you have gone beyond the mind. You are seeing these things, but you are interpreting it in a different way because of the evolved buddhi. So then you don't see anything other than Ishvara. Not a single atom, as Swamiji said, can move independent of this Ishvara, the Supreme Purusha. And that Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel so beautifully says, as long as you have a little bit of trace of egoism, Ishvara is real for you. It's only when you lose your ego, which is the last stage, where you merge in Brahman, when the river reaches the ocean, it becomes one. Then there is no forest, no stone against which it will dash, all these things. He says, when you have that small ego, you see a personal God or an Ishvara, an all pervading God, as the owner of the universe and all beings in it. That is the essence of the 11th chapter, that is Vishwarupa Darshana. So Sri Krishna showed him that even physically, though we are all distinct, we make so much of distinction, so much of hatred for each other. But really speaking, we are physically also, we are connected, interconnected. The whole universe is interconnected, even in a gross way. So what to speak of the subtle? The subtle level, we are more connected. We are more connected. That is why the more subtle you do your subtly you do your spiritual practice, it connects immediately. So that is why they say when you repeat the prayer loudly, though it has some merit, it will take time to percolate into the subtle. But if you are already doing the sadhana in a very subtle way, it is directly getting connected. So the more subtle you are, Sri Krishna says in verse 13 and 14, you evolve You don't just see him as the sum total of the whole universe, as Virat. You see him as Hiranyagarbha or the Ishvara. Hiranyagarbha and Ishvara are the same thing. They're just Vedanta, it is said, here it is said as Ishvara. So Ishvara, the owner of the universe, or one who is pervading this whole universe and all beings in it. Now, next 14th verse, 13th one we discussed. Now 14th we'll discuss today. Sarvendriya guna bhasam सर्वेन्द्रिय विवर्जितम असक्तम सर्वभृच्चैव निर्गुणम गुणभोक्तृ च सर्वे इंद्रिय गुणाभासम means whatever we see through our sense organs, eyes, ears, everything that we see shining, they are shining in the sense we are making sense out of it. It's not enough if you just see. If you are absent minded, you may still see, but you may not make any sense out of it. You'll just see something going on and you don't make any judgment. You are not getting involved in that seeing. But if you see it with more and more awareness, then you make sense out of it. So they are shining by the functions of the senses. The function of the senses is to not only show you, even a camera shows you, but the camera doesn't have life. It does not interpret the data. You also see, just as a camera, you can't compare your eyes with a well-developed or an advanced camera. Camera will see and project whatever it sees. It will not interpret. Maybe using artificial intelligence, it will interpret some data. But here we make sense out of it. Whatever we see, we give a, it is shining, guna bhasam. We give a quality to it. Whether it is good, bad, what we are seeing is good, we make some judgments, we make some preliminary judgments, but if our buddhi is developed, we make much better judgments. We just don't go by external behavior or external appearance. There was one brahmachari who joined Swami Ghananand, when Ghananandji was the first head of our center, when he joined Muswell Hill. So when you first come to spirituality, you doubt all these things, the subtle powers, the subtle existence, the capacity of the mind to understand things in a very subtle way, as Sri Krishna says. When you evolve, the buddhi also evolves. So naturally you suspect. If you are very scientific, you just want evidence for everything, as in you see in a laboratory. So one of the brahmacharis, who himself told me this, was just he was told by somebody that Swamiji has a capacity of understanding what you are thinking. So he thought it is ridiculous. I can't believe this. I mean, how is it possible, ever possible? And apparently, seeing the Swami coming down, being helped by two of his sevaks, he was not in a physically fit condition. So he thought, oh, this not even able to walk. He was very quite old at that time. And while he was coming down, he had a mischievous thought of if he is really spiritual, but he was trying to hide his doubt and trying to smile at that Swami, thinking that, okay, these people make such a big fuss, he understands, he can read the thoughts and mind and other things. He can perceive the subtle vibrations. I don't believe in all this. Maybe modern scientific education. So he was smiling, not to offend that Swami Ghananandji, and he was at the same time trying to have a mischievous smile, but at the same time his mind was full of doubts. Initially it happens. Later on, of course, he became very devoted to that Swami. But as soon as he passed, he was coming down, he was not even able to walk properly. He was helped by someone to slowly come down the staircase, and that brahmachari or novice who was there, he just looked at him and smiling, trying to conceal his mischievous thought that, oh, what kind of, they say he has this capacity. Then immediately the Swamiji turned to him and told him appearances can be deceptive. So he was shocked. How could Maharaj understand that I am referring, I mean, what appears may not be true. So here Sri Krishna says, it is shining by the function of all senses. Senses may see one thing, but to understand it, to interpret that data through the medium of a highly evolved buddhi, Same thing may be seen by five different people. One will interpret it in a very gross way, another may interpret it in a very subtle way. So, the reality, the Ishvara, Gunabhasam, when it considers the functions of all the senses present that data, but Ishvara, he Sarva Indriya Vivarjitam, though he is getting all his data from the senses, Gunabhasam, Sarva Indriya Gunabhasam, he sees everything, but he is also beyond that. That means he can take an independent judgment. Unattached, because he is unattached, because that reality, Ishvara is unattached. He appears to be acting through all the sense organs. So that is why we have a poor opinion of, but those who are evolved, they understand things in a very subtle way. Sarva Bhrut, supporting all. The Ishvara supports us all, but at the same time it is unattached. Asaktam, asaktam. Eva, Nirgunam, devoid of gunas, though he is the experience of guna bhoktru. Bhoktru means one who enjoys. He sees the whole world, he pervades the whole universe. Shining by the functions of all these senses, he appears to be doing all this thing. Yet he is without senses. He is sustaining all, though he is devoid of gunas. He experiences them as the kshetragnya, experiencer. What is experienced is kshetra, the field, and the knower of the field is kshetragnya. So, sunlight, the example that is given, Sri Ramakrishna also gave that example. White light, when it passes through the prism of Maya, it appears as different colors. The same white light, which is composed, is not evident when you see white light. When it is split, the colorful forms are seen. But the true perspective of a knower of Brahman is that it is the same white light which is appearing as many. It is the interpreter of all forms and colors that we see, the colorful universe. Apparently, it appears that the light is taking different hues, but the pure light is itself without any color. Similarly, Chaitanya or consciousness, that is the pure knower, though it is totally, the characteristic is pure consciousness, it is when it passes, percolates through the senses, it appears that it is transmigratory, it is so colorful, it has so many things and other, so many varieties, and you see the temporary nature there. So Brahman or absolute awareness, the Kshetragna, is the Chidakasha. It is also given a word, Chit Akasha, the knower or the consciousness. And it is like a screen, on the screen. Swami Vivekananda gave this example in his Jnana Yoga. On the screen, when you project an image, the projector projects a film. It appears to be real. The characters, the activity, everything appears to be real till it is projected. But the moment you stop the projection, there is nothing on the screen. The screen is white. The pictures do not get their color from the screen. They get their color by its very nature. They split into different. The screen helps the image or the pictures or the rays of the projector to assume different colors, though it is not getting colored. So the moment you switch off the projector, the white screen appears again, what it was. So similarly, Ishvara or this pure consciousness, though it is percolating through the senses, it is detached, just as the screen is detached. The whole movie may be playing out on the screen. When the movie is playing out, you think all the action is happening on the screen. And you feel that something is happening there, but the moment the projector is switched off, you go back to the original state. So that is what the background of all what Sri Krishna is explaining is that Brahman, and he though interacts as Ishvara through all these phenomena that we see, the changing phenomena, and our sadhana is using that same phenomena, using the mantra, using the prayer, using the spiritual practice, karma yoga, whatever yoga we do, we reverse the process. The projection which was there, which was assuming different roles, different fights, so many, the trouble that we see, because we get involved in the kshetra, And the kshetra makes our life miserable. So only when we know the kshetrajna, so the whole essence of spiritual life is to return back to the source from where we came, the source light, which appeared to be colorful, and then it gave rise to so much of confusion. We go back to the source. So Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel says, commenting, I mean, it is like a commentary on this verse. He says both the aspects, with form, God with form and with all the universe around him, and without form, belong to the same God, the same reality. Faith in one implies faith in another. This was not understood by M. He said, how can God be both? Either he is formless or he is with form. That was the Brahmo idea that he had. The fire and its heating property, this is Sri Ramakrishna's example, they cannot be separated. You may say, I just want the fire without the heat or without the burning property. You can't separate. So the gunas are there because of the sense organs, but at the same time it is separate. The sun and the sunbeams are inseparable. Milk and its whiteness is inseparable. Similarly, Saguna Brahman and Nirguna Brahman are one and the same. It is not possible to conceive of one to the exclusion of other. Now he comes to verse number 15. He explains it in a different way. Bahirantascha bhutanam acharam charamevacha sukshmatvat avigneyam durastham cha antike cha tat. Means Bahi, he is outside of us, he is inside of us. Bhutanam, Bhutanam means of all beings, not only of us, of everything. He is the outside and he is the inside. He is the movable and he is the immovable. Charam eva acharam cha. Sukshmatvat, because it is subtle, because our buddhi has not been evolved. The more subtle the mind, the more clearly we grasp these truths. That is why Sri Krishna is not insisting that Arjuna should understand. Right now he is in a different mood. His Swadharma is different. He is gross. Let him fight the war. And he may come to a stage where he can understand the subtle things. He says, I'm telling you everything now, but many things you may feel irrelevant now. They may just appear, because we are just trying to understand intellectually what should be really pursued. And that perception comes only through spiritual practice. So that is why Swamiji says, unless you see these realities, experience these realities, that he is inside, he is outside. So when Sri Ramakrishna goes to Mother Kali, he was in tune with the people around him. They said, Sri Ramakrishna, they told him, why don't you just go and plead to the mother that you are allowed to eat something so that you can spend some more time with us, for our sake, not for your sake. But because they saw only the gross. And the mother scolded him because he said, all your life you have been practicing sadhana. You are supposed to see the subtle. You are supposed to see, according to verse number 13 to 15 of Bhagavad Gita, you are supposed to see that you are eating through different mouths, you are hearing through different ears. But because it is subtle, because your mind was not subtle at that time, we cannot say Sri Ramakrishna's mind was not, but immediately he understood. When mother showed him that you are eating through different mouths, he got convinced. If somebody tells us when we have a disease and somebody says that why don't you eat through your sons and daughters, everybody is eating, we'll think he is mad. How can I can't eat, I know only that much. But for Sri Ramakrishna, immediately, because he's sukshmatvat, because it is subtle. And he could, in a subtle way, when mother said, explain to him that you are eating through different mouths, he said, yes, that is true. Swami Turiyananji also, he tried to test Swami Turiyananji when he said, you see, I have so much pain. What do you think? All people call that I am an avatara and all those things. What do you think? He said, you may say anything, but I know you have understood who you are. You are full of joy within. It's the pain that you are showing outside is just an appearance. And Sri Ramakrishna was very much pleased because he understood. Turiyananji had that subtle buddhi awakened. He could identify Sri Ramakrishna's external trouble as not impacting because he was detached, because it was sukshma. Only another sukshma buddhi or mind can understand. That is unknowable for most of us. Not that it is unknowable. it is unknowable to a gross mind, is far, yet it is very near. That means what is far to you, which is not understandable or what not perceivable to a ordinary person, is perceivable to God or to people who are one with God. So without and within all beings, moving and unmoving, not in the moving, because of his subtlety, is incomprehensible to a ordinary mind, ordinary intellect. He is comprehensible to one who has evolved, his mind is become subtle. How the cosmic consciousness the cosmic consciousness, somehow it remains individual. How is it possible that if everything is cosmic, why do we consider that cosmic consciousness, and from where does that I come, and why we are thinking of ourselves as limited consciousness? All we have to understand is we are part of that cosmic consciousness. We intellectually understand it, but we don't perceive it. So why? So Sri Ramakrishna gave a beautiful example of the ocean, where in the near the Arctic, he said there are some places in the ocean near the pole where ice never melts. It's always ice. Water is always ice. Whereas in the plains, if you freeze it, it will ice. The moment you heat it with the sun or expose it to the sun, it will melt and it will become water. So Akasha remains undivided, but in some places it assumes form. So Paramatma is all pervading, but at the same time, because of the ego, that water which was one with the whole ocean, at some places, because of the ego, it took a form. And if the iceberg thinks that I am separate from the ocean, it is not the fault of the ocean, it is part and parcel. So, Paramatma, he appears, the Nirguna Brahman or the Kshetra, appears as Kshetrajna or the representative of the Kshetrajna to a person who is evolving. In verse 13 to 15, he says this meditation or these verses are an indication or are the means through which you can attempt to understand the Brahman through the prism of Maya or through the concept of Ishvara. So this is just a concept. But still the ego is there. He says he sees Ishvara, he sees the personal God, he has a relationship with that personal God. Like Sri Ramakrishna said, I don't know about all the Jnana and all. I just know I and my mother. Mother means the Supreme Mother whom he considered to be Ishta. So as long as the ego is there, he says there's no harm if you consider that ego as part of the universal ego. That is why he said the difference between Kacha Ami and Paka Ami. Paka Ami means it is a ripe ego which takes you towards the formless, the raw ego which makes you gravitate towards the world. So, the symptoms of egoism, Sri Ramakrishna says, so beautifully he says, the symptoms of egoism are found because he experienced that. When one comes down from samadhi to wakefulness, when he comes to the normal world, slowly the ego enters. Such an enlightened one, it's not the ego of an ignorant one who has reached the goal. And then Sri Ramakrishna gave another beautiful example. He said, when you climb the steps, you think the terrace is made of some other material because you have not seen it. He says you go, ascend all the stairs. Then you see this is made of brick, this is made of brick, this is made of brick. And finally you go on the top and then you say, oh, even this terrace is made of brick. So when you come down, then you are not surprised because you have seen till the terrace was unknown. You always thought that is something different. So when one comes down from samadhi, the same ego which slowly was slowly was destroyed, and when you became one with the universal truth, Brahman, and then you came back, you found that ego at now that ego is not harmful. He says the enlightened one sees himself as all the beings and universe as the various manifestation of that same Ishvara. When there is egoism in you, he says, you don't have to uh, follow the path of impersonal Brahman, as some of them said, God is without form. It is a hypocrisy to consider God can be personal. He can never be personal. That is some of the strict monists hold that. But he says Nirguna Brahman cannot be comprehended by everyone. As long as even a little bit of ego remains, there's another alternative which Krishna himself is telling Arjuna. You consider him to be Ishvara with form, with feet, hand, everywhere I see the nature, I am reminded of that Ishvara, which is ultimately the Nirguna Brahman or the formless God, but he has assumed form for my sake. Just as the ocean in some places, they are they take the form of ice. The body, mind, and the whole world that causes so much of problem, our body, our mind, that is the root cause of all problem. If they are projections of that Ishvara, they are mere projections. As that is why these verses are so important, and they can serve as verses which will help us to meditate, because we still have the ego. So let us understand through the prism of ego, how do we see the world? How should we see the world so that that ignorance goes? Ishvara or Saguna Brahman is as real as this is Nirguna Brahman. This is Sri Krishna's contribution. Earlier, M was who wrote the gospel, who recorded the gospel, was told again and again by his by whatever philosophy he had read that reality cannot be true. If it is formless, it cannot be form with form. It is foolish to say that God can be both with and without form. But through this example of iceberg, Sri Krishna, he had not even seen iceberg. He said, I have heard that in some places near the, he obviously did not go near the Arctic Ocean. He says there are places which I have heard, maybe some scientist must have told him, there was some disciple, that there are places where ice never melts. That means the personal God is ever existing. In whatever form we conceive, Shiva, Krishna, they are eternal forms. That is why some of the Vaishnavas don't want to get rid of that form. They said, if we have to hold on to the eternal formless, why not hold to the eternal form? Because iceberg in the Arctic region, the iceberg is as it's nothing but water. But just as in the tropics, iceberg melts and becomes one with water, I don't want, I prefer to have that eternal iceberg because I know it is the same and I prefer to accept reality as a God with form. So that is why they speak of Vaikuntha, where eternal Krishna, in that eternal Krishna form he remains. Nothing wrong in that. So it is as real as Nirguna Brahman. That is how Sri Ramakrishna uh, reconciled it. But still, verse number 16 and 17, he will still, because he realizes that Arjuna may not be ready to accept. How can God be both? He first spoke of Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Kshetra is the field that we see, but which is seen by the Kshetrajna, the knower of Kshetra. So the question may arise, now he thinks that Arjuna may ask me this question, how did that Kshetrajna become Kshetra? If they are one and the same, in the as he mentions in the previous verse, 13 to 15, 16, 17 is trying to show the one is appearing as many. It is not that there is one here and there are many there and the many should become one. No. One is appearing as many. That is why these 16, 17 and 18 verses, 16 and 17 verses, Shankaracharya comments by saying that you see, one itself is there. Brahman alone exists because he was not interested in Maya. He was not interested in ego. He assumed that after a long struggle, after giving up the ego, doing a lot of karma yoga, dhyana yoga and everything, at the last stage he comes to Jnana Yoga, or that is Upanishads, and immediately your concern should be with Brahman only, not bother about the different aspects of personal God, Maya. He says that is meant for lower intellect. So whatever it is, how that one appears as many, Sri Krishna is neutral. He is neither Advaitin, he is trying to harmonize all the ideals. So he says, Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu, Vibhaktam eva cha sthitam. See this eva, Shankaracharya will be very happy. He says it appears as if it is many. And he says, see, did I not tell you? It is all Maya. There is no. And then people try to become otherworldly. They want to live with change. They want to live with varieties. They want to live with transform. Though they know it is not permanent, they want to live with temporary things. So they are very terrified when they Shankaracharya tells them it is all Maya. I said, how can I say Maya? My money is Maya, my wife is Maya, house is Maya, everything is Maya. And so it's a very fearful exercise for only extreme monastics can follow that religion. So that is why Shankara's philosophy, though it appears intellectually, because intellectually it appears to appeals to anyone. As long as you're not forced to live the world and practice it, Advaita is fine. Just as Sri Krishna is telling, maybe Arjuna was also very happy with this explanation. But when it comes to real practice, you have to consider that if it is Maya, it should be given up. But since we cannot give up, Sri Krishna and also Sri Ramakrishna says, take it for real because your ego is there. So you can't just give up this world. So consider that same Ishvara, Saguna Ishvara as Nirguna. Whereas Shankaracharya perhaps would not, he would like this verse. Because here Sri Krishna says, Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu, undivided in beings, divided, it appears as if it is divided. So when you say appears, that means it is not real. So if you take it literally, then all our quarrels, all our distinction of superior, inferiority, my things, your things, everything will go. If we are really convinced by verse number 16, as Shankaracharya interprets it, then we should not have any problems. But unfortunately, we have to evolve our buddhi slowly. So he says he is undivided. If he is undivided, then why am I crying about divisions? About transformating things that are transformed, things that live, things that die. I would have become immortal in an instant if I knew, or rather, if I had been convinced that it is undivided. He said, Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu. Though it is avibhakta, it appears as it seems to be divided in beings. Bhuteshu vibhaktam eva cha sthitam, existing. He is known to be he is to be known as the supporter of all beings. He devours and he generates. Devours means he kills. So that is what Vishwarup was all about. He creates, he generates. Grasishnu. Grasishnu means devouring. Grasa. Grasa. Grasa means to eat. Literally it means to consume, to eat. So anything that is destroyed, devouring. Neyam, you should know him as Prabha Vishnu. Prabha Vishnu means Vishnu, that is generating. Prabha, which gives rise to different forms. So just as giving rise to different forms is his characteristic, Grasishnu, he is not only Prabha Vishnu, but he is Grasishnu. He is devouring. He devours, and yet he devours everything. Everything that has been created, it will disappear into him. But we hopefully, with lot of hopes, think that it will keep on generating. Nothing will be destroyed. So we are trying to we are not trying to see avibhakta. Avibhakta means that undivided reality. If you can see that, that is what spirituality is all about. To see certainty in the midst of uncertainty. To see undivided existence in the midst of divisions and all the strifes and all the troubles that we are facing because of considering ourselves to be divided. That I am superior, you are inferior, you are superior, I am inferior. All these complexes, all these possessions, everything he says is because of this appearance. So Akasha is all pervading, yet it appears to be divided into innumerable forms. That it is the supporter, that Purushottama or the Paramatma, universal consciousness, is the support to the Jagat, the universe, and the Jivatma. They appear to be different because for as long as you consider yourself as a Jivatma, there will be a Paramatma, there will be a Jagat around you. So finally, only during Pralay means when it dissolves. That is why it was very important for Sri Krishna to show the form of God which dissolves. He said, don't be just happy that God goes on creating more and more things for you and you will live happily ever after. It never will happen that. But that creation will lead to destruction someday or the other. So the destructive form, they merge into Parma. That is known as, at a universal level, at an individual level, it is known as death, Marana, whereas in a universal level, it is known as Pralaya. You can't say it is only during Pralaya all the created beings are absorbed. It is something like a black hole. The whole Big Bang creates the universe. It expands, 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 but there is a limit. When it expands beyond a certain limit, it will collapse, collapse, and then finally merge. So they reappear again, but it is a cyclical existence. See, Hinduism never believes that a pralaya is eternal. That pralaya takes place again to give rise to another creation. Again, there is pralaya. So it is like cyclical. The waves come up, they disappear into the sea, and they are either as waves or as a calm sea, they are part of the sea. So Sri Krishna now gives in his gospel, you see how beautifully he in fact met a sadhu who was staying in the kutia of a small cottage. You know, people, varieties of monks used to come. And but Sri Krishna used to understand them and their behavior, though for normal worldly people they appear to be mad. He says a holy man used to stay in Dakshineshwar, and now and then he would just come out of the hut and shout, and suddenly he will be totally demoralized, and then he'll say, see, this is the play of Maya. Then what is so surprising about it? When he saw the clear sky, you'd come out and see the glory of the Lord. Everything is so. Suddenly dark clouds in Calcutta, if you are on the bank of the Ganga, you can see that. Suddenly pointing to the dark cloud, see, this is how ignorance comes. The sky was clear, and again it will be blown by the wind. And he used to laugh, and yeah, he was just to see this changing phenomena. He used to come now and then, do a lot of sadhana when he was inside the hut. So he says he used to come and explain, and Sri Krishna explains this, uh, saying that I was so happy to hear him coming out when the wind blew out all the clouds. He said, oh, such a beautiful blue infinite sky. And then suddenly they appear, and suddenly when it again disappears, he would come out and shout as if it is a great phenomena, because he was saying, he was explaining this phenomena which normally people would think as just a phenomena of nature. He said Brahman is the contentless consciousness, like the blue sky, like the clear sky. As clouds appear in the latter, so also the universe of beings and transformation, of creation, destruction, it appears, though the blue sky is unaffected. So that is what he used to say. Every time the blue sky appeared, it reminded that sadhu was there. Sri Krishna says he was a jnani. Obviously, he was a jnani. So even this changing phenomena would send him, create in his mind uh, the picture of an undivided Brahman. When you see divisions, when you see destruction, creation, everything. So that is how all our sadhana is nothing but using this changing universe or the changing phenomena to take us to the changeless. That is exactly the meaning of bija. Somebody was asking what is that bija represent. The bija is a concept in the tantras or in the explanation of Shakti, when the same Brahman, which is contentless, which is undivided, it becomes para prakriti, which is the second part of the bija. whichever bija, Rim, Shrim, Krim, there are so many bijas. There are four parts normally to every bija mantra, which is nothing but the explanation of verse 16 and 17 that we discussed today. How the unfathomable, or how the unknown, that which is unknown or that which is one appears as many. The answer is the Bij Mantra. Bij Mantra is giving you the complete explanation of the Tantras, at least they believe that this Bija is the whole explanation of how the universe is designed and how to get rid of our sorrows. But because sorrows are because of many, not because of one. If everything was the undivided kshetra, kshetragna, then kshetra would not disturb us. We are one as one with the kshetragna, one with Brahman. But till we reach that, we use a instrument of Shakti itself. So we use the instrument of Maya or Shakti, which is known as Bija, to get rid of that creation, that creative or transformative nature, which alone will give us, which alone will give us back our peace, our the infinite Brahman, the infinite existence, the knower of the pure consciousness, which we were originally and which we are even now. But that blue sky is not seen because of the appearance of clouds. So, how to remove the clouds is what sadhana, what bija does. Every repetition of the bija, removing one darkness, one say segment of the cloud, just as the wind does not blow the cloud all at a time. It takes time. A little bit of breeze every time you repeat the bija, it is supposed to remove one small ignorance among the thousands and thousands of bits of ignorance which look like a cloud. So, one appearance, they appear as many. The bija, the second character, third character, and the fourth character, which is the anuswara of the bija, is like putting an end to all sorrow by putting an end to all differentiation and giving us back the unitary consciousness, which alone is of the nature of Sat, Chit, and Ananda. The whole undivided Satchidananda appearing as waves, as big waves, small waves, and creating turbulence in our life has to be countered by the bija, which is part of the mantra or part of the prayer. Every prayer does the same thing, whether it is Gayatri Mantra, any other prayer in any religion, every prayer is supposed to use the creative principle to destroy the evil effects or the a little bit of ignorance, collective ignorance that has come as a result of clouds appearing on a clear sky. So, bit by bit, we destroy and assume or hope that each one of them is destroying a little bit of our karma and we go back to the Kshetragna, the original source from where we came. So, in the verse 17, now we'll conclude. It says, Jyotisham api tad jyoti tamasa jyotisham api tad jyoti tamasa paramam uchyate jnanam geyam jnanagamyam ridhi sarvasya tishna. I'll just give the meaning. The light of all lights, that is the Brahman, he is said to be beyond darkness, darkness of ignorance, who is the knowledge, he is the knowable and the goal of knowledge. And where does he exist? This is very important. Where does this knowledge come? It does not come in the head or it does not come outside. It comes in the hearts of all. That's why Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Riddeshi Arjuna Tishtati. This Ishvara sits in the heart. So Buddhi is the seat of Buddhi is also the heart. Meditation is also in the heart. That is how here seated Sarvasya Vishtitam. Ridhi means in the heart. Ridhi Sarvasya Vishtitam. Vishtitam means firmly established. Not anywhere else. You cannot evolve the buddhi in the brain or in the hand or in the leg. Buddhi, there is only one seat, the center of the heart, the center of our consciousness, where sitting there, he is like a Jyotisham Jyoti, the light of all lights. This is an excellent example of how one should meditate. Jyotisham api jyoti tat tamasa paramuchyate. It destroys the knowledge. It destroys by its very shining nature the darkness of ignorance. Jnanam gnayam jnanagamyam riddhi service. Sitting in the heart, that bright light of lights, that is Brahman, which is the supreme consciousness, which is the Kshetrajna. The knower is sitting there very quietly, allowing the whole drama to be played out outside. But till you see that light of lights, he's sitting there, seated in the hearts of all. It is only when the uh, ignorance is destroyed, just as that monk who came and saw outside, the wind was coming and just blowing off the ignorance. Does the sadhana that we do destroy the ignorance, and the light of lights is revealed in the heart? So the light does not go anywhere. You see, Sri Ramakrishna says the sky was there. It was blue, the blue infinite sky, even before the clouds came. And when the clouds came, it was still there, but we could not see it. It required it required sadhana, that is the wind of uh, sadhana, to destroy the clouds of ignorance. And this phenomena, according to him, it is uh, realized in the heart. That is why Sri Ramakrishna says in the Gospel, he who realizes this Ishvara in the heart is able to realize him outside also. He who has not known him within himself. That is why the first realization takes place inside. Everybody, when Sharadanand asked Sri Ramakrishna, because he had read he had read the Gita, he had read Upanishad, that everywhere God exists. So why can't I see him in everyone? Why should I sit in a corner and do meditation and see him within? So Sri Ramakrishna tells him, he who realizes the Ishvara in the heart is able to realize him outside, not the other way around. So people who are very extrovert, they just don't want to get rid, they just don't want to live with themselves. There's a joke which says, the, the only person I'm afraid of, we think we are afraid of people outside. No. The main person whom we are not ready to face is our own self. Because we find as soon as we go into solitude and try to see our real nature, we are full of fright, because we have to give up all the external world. So it is not possible, according to Sri Ramakrishna, to see him first outside and then try to see him inside. No, he says he who realizes, because Sri Krishna is very clearly telling him he has to be seen in the heart, seated in the hearts of all. He could have, it definitely is seated, but we cannot see others' hearts. We cannot meditate in the heart of others. We have to meditate in our own heart. So he is the seat of knowledge. He who has not known him means the Ishvara within himself, cannot realize him in others' hearts. Therefore, he who sees God in his heart sees the same God everywhere. That is a result of seeing God within, you see God without. That is how Sri Ramakrishna uh, says bhakti evolves into jnana. In verse 18, we'll not start that. You start with bhakti and then you see him everywhere. That is jnana. First, you see him in your God. That is bhakti. You start with bhakti. So here you see, just as Sri Ramakrishna says, it is bhakti that evolves. If God wants, because some of the Gyanis feel that bhakti is a lower stage. But Sri Ramakrishna doesn't say that. He says it is that through bhakti only it evolves into jnana. Iti kshetram tatha jnanam geyam cha uktam samasata. In briefly, I am telling you what is kshetra, kshetrajna. But mad bhaktam etad vignaya mad bhavaya upapadyate. That means mad bhakta. Again he says, who? I have given you this knowledge, but don't think it is so easy to understand or realize this knowledge. But my devotee, means my one who is devoted to me, who, but knowing this, becomes fit to attain that state of jnana. So, kshetra and the kshetrajna, briefly, I have explained to you. But my devotee, that means you start with bhakti, plead or meditate on the Lord within, and tell him reveal to me what is Kshetrajna and what is Kshetra. The seeing the one within will enable you to say the one within the many, and that is the uh, goal of not only Gita but every religious discipline. It ultimately leads through that. He says he alone is a Jnani who has realized Ishvara. He becomes like a babe after, like a baby after God realization. The baby has no individuality of its own. Therefore, divinity beams through it. That's why he used to say that babies are normally without any ego. It is only when they grow up the ego comes. So, in that sense, he says, see, there is absolutely no ego. For him, he's seeing that divinity everywhere. Unfortunately, when it grows up, the ego enters, or society forces him to lose that, become more and more individual. The more and more the ego enters, that divinity disappears. So, uh, he is a Jnani who has realized this Ishvara within. Ishvara can be realized only when the ego is subservient or consumed. That is why every time you meditate, you utter the word Namaha at the end, not me, not I dedicate everything to the Lord, who is the all in all. So progressively, that ego becomes less. It won't go so easily. That is why Thakur said, if it doesn't go, let it be a Bhakta Ami. Means, I am a devotee of God. I can't remove that ego. Somehow that I will come. That ahankar will come again and again. But let it remain as a subservient to the Ishvara. So one who realizes Ishvara becomes a Jnani. So bhakti leads to Jnana. So that is how. Is there any question? Yeah. Hmm? To our pain. Okay. Okay. Anathema. Yes. The question is, changes are known only through pain, not necessary. It is an anathema, no doubt, because changes can be through pleasure also. Pleasure and pain can both show change. Suppose you become a billionaire, suddenly somebody gives you a huge amount and you get a gift. The change is very pleasant. It has changed. You were poor, now you have suddenly become rich. Why should it always be pain? But when from richness you become a pauper, then it can be pain. So change is not always, but ultimately, according to Buddha, that is why many people think that Buddha was a very negative person. Because the moment you say change is giving rise, because he believed suffering is only because of change. Change leads to suffering. But what he said was ultimately it will lead to pain. So any change will lead to pain. That is the idea. Okay. Any more questions? So we'll conclude. So the idea here is in this chapter, we have still 19, 20, 21, the verses are still there. Uh, but the idea here is all our sadhana, all our spiritual practices is to hold on to the unchangeable, hold on to certainty in the midst of uncertainty, which is because of change. So the 13th chapter, Kshetra Kshetrajna Yoga. Kshetrajna, Sri Krishna is explaining to Arjuna. I am explaining to you both the aspects. One is a changing universe, which sometimes through pleasure, sometimes through pain, reminds you of the temporary nature of the very nature of Prakriti is temporary. By very nature, since it is temporary, it cannot give you permanent peace. So what is the solution? So Krishna says the kshetra also has to be known, that is the changing universe. No matter how long its life may be, it is definitely not eternal. And the moment it slips out of your hand, whether it is money, health, whatever it is, when it slips out of your hand, you understand that change is painful. And that change, which Buddha says, that suffering is because of the changing universe that we see around us, which is also because of the changing mind. So he says, study the mind and you reach nirvana. Here he says, you understand the kshetrajna, that is the knower, To know the knower, you have to first accept that there are these two realities. So he explains from verse 1 to till we come to the verse 18 now, that trying to hold on to the changeless, which does not change, which can give you eternal peace. But what is the path? He just gives a hint that that changeless reality can be acquired or evolved by the evolution of the buddhi within, which is the seat of which is the heart. So that is why we always meditate in the heart. You can't meditate, you can definitely meditate on God outside, but he will always remain outside. He will not become the center of your consciousness. That is why Swami Vivekananda in his Gyan Yoga talks in London, he said, a God outside sitting somewhere in the clouds is no God at all, because he is like a ruler. He is not relevant to me in the sense, if he is just a ruler, giving the subjects whatever they deserve or taking from subjects, imprisoning him, if he behaves like a king, he is of not of much use to me. So everywhere, even the God of any religion is never outside. The kingdom of heaven is within me, is inside me. That is what Bible also says. But unfortunately, we think of a God outside, which gives us gifts, which gives us doles. We are happy when he gives us good things. We are unhappy when he takes away our good things. So a God outside is always will lead to suffering. That is what Krishna says. My devotee who knows the Kshetra and Kshetrajna and meditates on me in the heart, very clearly says, the light of all lights, who is beyond all darkness, the knowledge, that is Kshetrajna, and the knowable, that is Kshetra, the changing universe around us, the goal of knowledge is seated in the hearts of all. Riddhi Sarvasya Vishtitam. So that is the essence. Slowly then he will explain why we should meditate on that reality, who will remove all ignorance and as a result will attain everlasting peace and happiness. That is explained in the next verses. So we'll discuss in the next class. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. So tomorrow we have the Great Master or Gospel. Yeah, tomorrow the Great Master. That will be the last class before May 20th. As I said, I'll be next week. There's a program in Leicester. After that, Sunday there will be no class, and the next class will be after I return from Chicago on the 20th of May. So 21st, after 21st, the classes will resume. So there will be no